This is a story about how Pythagoras discovered, or invented, if you will, the musical scale, which is the foundation of all of our music today. He lived around 500 BC in ancient Greece. And imagine the environment, what it was like at the nights for those people. For one, is there was no lighting, there was no air pollution, there was no light pollution. So one thing is they were living underneath this canopy of stars every night, the kind of stars that you can only see sometimes in the desert here. The stars that are so close, they feel like they touch you. And that's how they felt. They were moved by these planets and the stars and the motions of things. And they thought they were connected to the human spirit. What else did they have at night? They also had music. Now the music they had was singing, of course, and these instruments, stringed instruments called lyres. And what was a lyre? A lyre was like about this big or so, and it was a stringed instrument like a miniature harp. So it had no frets, no way to actually play it, other than to pluck these strings or strum them. But they were able to tune these things so that they were very harmonious. And the Greeks were very moved by this music. So they're moved by the stars, and they're moved by the music. And they think these things have to be connected to the human spirit, because the human spirit reacted so much in a harmonious way with both of them. So Pythagoras, with a mathematical mind, wanted to understand what was behind this. He wanted to study and see if there was some kind of mathematical relationships between these things. Well, the planets and the human spirit were difficult, so he went after music. He wanted to find out what made some sounds harmonious and others not. It was a big mystery. So he built himself a thing called a monochord. And it was it was about this big or so or something, and it was a single string, as the name implies, a single string, and you could pluck it, and you could hold it down and pluck it at different lengths. So he was looking to see, for these really harmonious spots, where did they occur? What is the ratio of the big string to the shorter string when you do that? And well, we have something like a monochord right here on all of our stringed instruments, and this is kind of basically what he had, a string like this. So he went and he started playing around with it. Boom, boom, there's one, different kind of things he looked at, and he found this one though. And he thought that was pretty neat. And it turns out that that happened to be exactly at the halfway point of the string. If you look at this string from here to here, this is the midpoint, and it's what we call an octave today, but it had a ratio of 2 to 1. So a simple integer ratio of 2 to 1 made a nice harmony. He looked for another one, and the next one he found was actually down here. And that is, well, a third. So this is a third of the string, and this is twice that. So here you have a 3 to 2 ratio. So this is 2/3. Also a beautiful harmonious sound. He found another one. Right here. Well, you're right. That's a quarter of the string. That's a quarter of the string. So that's the 4 to 3 ratio right here. And he thought that these were really key. And he was amazed that these simple integer ratios explained some of the most harmonious sounds. Well, how important are these discoveries that Pythagoras made? Well, look at this instrument. I told you this was at the 12th fret, and that's the halfway point. It's got a big dot there. This one here, this 2/3 ratio, also has a big dot, and so does this one, has a dot. So clearly the people who built this instrument thought that those ratios were important, and they put those dots there. And what are those dots good for? Well, I'll show you. Greatest rock and roll song ever written is based entirely on the 3/4 and 2/3 positions on the string. What else is this good for? Well, blues and rock and roll, lots of jazz. It's all based on these exact same 3/4 and 2/3 ratio. Here's your basic 12-bar blues. Open strings. Open string. was crucial. Everything is playing to exactly what Pythagoras figured out. Well, Pythagoras didn't stop there. He said, these are amazing ratios. And he said, well, I wonder if I can build a whole musical scale. I wonder if I just keep going with these 2/3 ratios, and that was his favorite one, what I could come up with. And so he decided to put a mark on his monochord right at the halfway point. And he decided these notes were kind of the same in a sense, but one was twice as long as the other, but it was a beautiful harmony. And he wanted to see if he could find a bunch of notes in between these two. So the first one, of course, was his favorite, was this. So there's the first two notes of his scale, that 2/3 point. And here's the brilliance of what he decided to do next. He said, from this note, what should be the next note? Well, take it 2/3 again. So he took this remaining string, and he found the 2/3 part, and he put a line right there. Well, that happens to be right here. So here it is again, that same 2/3 ratio. But this time, this one is outside of his, where his, what we call an octave, it was outside of it. So how does he get this note back up there? Well, he doubles it. So you take this string, and that makes it an octave higher. So we make this, and we double it, and guess what? We wind up here at the 2nd fret. So now he had 3 notes. He started here, he went here, and he went here. Well, he did it again. So that brought him up to here. So now he had boom, 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 and so on. He kept dividing the remaining string length by 2/3, doubling it if necessary, and an amazing thing happened. After 12 of these notes, he wound up here, right back where he started. I mean, or an octave higher, actually. So he'd gone from here to here in 12 steps. And, well, here's all our frets. So, having discovered these 3:2 ratios and the 4:3 and stuff, he was just blown away by the fact that these simple integer ratios explained the incredible power of the music. And he thought that if these explained the harmonies of the music, which was clearly related to the harmonies of the stars and the motion of the planets above, it had to explain that as well as the human spirit. And so they believed in this thing, and they believed these small integers could describe the motions of the stars, and the sun, the planets, and the moon. Which brings me to a classic jazz tune called Fly Me to the Moon. And Fly Me to the Moon is based on the circle of fifths. And what is the circle of fifths? Well, this ratio that Pythagoras discovered is in fact what we call today a fifth. And that's because it's the 5th note of the scale. Like that. And so there it is, the 5th note of the scale. We call that a fifth. And what he effectively done was in fact circle the fifths. He invented the scale by circling the fifths. Circle of fifths isn't some like thing that's in there. The circle of fifths is the reason the scale exists. It was how it was invented, going around those fifths. Well, Fly Me to the Moon is one of the few songs, jazz songs, that actually is based entirely on the circle of fifths. And it goes backwards and it descends, but it has these beautiful chords that sit there and work their way down. And so I'd like to start kind of like with an A minor down here, but then come up and let it cascade down. So this is where Fly Me to the Moon starts, and it comes up here, and it comes down a little bit, and each of these is fifths. And then right back to where it started. So here were these simple integer relationships at the basis of all the music, and Pythagoras was and his companions were so taken with that, they figured it had to explain the motions of the planets and the heavens and the stars, and it had to connect to the human spirit as well as all life and trees and things growing, and everything had to be related to these small integer ratios, which he thought was the essence of everything. So they needed then to have, for their cult that they built up around this idea, they needed a symbol that would capture these small integer relationships, a symbol that would symbolize, like symbols are supposed to do. And so they did. They came up with a symbol. And this symbol was so important to them that you had to pray to it before. It was called a tetrad. And here's a prayer that they had to say. Bless us, divine number, thou who generated gods and men, O holy, holy tetrad, thou that containest the root and source of the eternally flowing creation. For the divine number begins with a profound, pure unity until it comes to the holy four. Then it begets the mother of all, the all-compromising, the all-bounding, the firstborn, the never-swerving, the never-tiring, holy ten, the keyholder of all. And what was that symbol? Bowling pins.
Fly